All right. So I know a lot of people are going to just watch the recording of this because I know it's kind of at a weird time where everyone's just getting off of work. So we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Brianna. I am the president and founder of Houston I-O Psychology Network. I'm here with Carroll. He is our program director. And we are here today to do the I-O professional panel on organizational change and consulting. And we have Matthew Lampe, Christina Moran, and Joey Haw. And I will go ahead and let them get started with introducing themselves.
I don't remember what the order was for introducing, so I'll let somebody either guide us, or if someone wants to jump in.
So Matthew, you're first, Christina, you're second, and then Joey, you'll be third.
Excellent. All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Lampe. I work in organization change management. I help people in organizations move through change, navigate change with a little bit more clarity and a little bit more purpose. I work for the state of Oregon with their business Oregon department, and really am focused on designing and guiding practices that support people through transitions in ways that are very thoughtful, intentional, and actually work for those involved. My academic journey into I-O psychology started with one of my classes in my last semesters when I first heard about I-O psychology. Prior to that, it was like I didn't even know that it was a thing, but I could see a connection between a lot of the psychology practices and the workplace. And yeah, it was in one of my last classes that I was introduced to I-O psychology, and the idea just kind of stuck with me from there. After I graduated with my undergraduate, I jumped right into my career and was working in financial services, got into leadership and management, nonprofit executive leadership. Over the course of about a decade, I picked up a lot of different experience from a lot of different places, but really still kept that focus on the people side, and kept that little voice in the back of my head that said, we know about organizational psychology and let's go for it at some point. And after about a decade, I finally said, all right, let's go back and get my degrees. And so I pursued my master's in organizational behavior and a PsyD in organization development. This was right around the time of right before COVID, and then COVID actually happened during my doctoral classes, and so that experience prompted a lot of where my research would end up going, and how I then ended up going toward change management and organization development. So my doctoral research really focused on how leaders adapt in real-time situations to change, whether it's expected or unexpected. And of course, that was a really strong example that we all remember of change that was not expected. And so the question that I wanted to look at that point was, really wanting to understand how people lead when circumstances are unpredictable, when circumstances are changing, when strategies that they've always had no longer apply. And what I found through that of how leaders were navigating that change was the leaders that were most effective relied pretty much on three things: cognitive flexibility, which is very similar to agility, emotional insight, and intentional action. Those findings led me into the study of agility, not just as a buzzword, but as something that's a lived behavior that can help people sort of pause, step back, choose their next actions or their next behaviors with a little bit more purpose or a little bit more intention. And agility really has become an important part of how I work and how I support others and how I lead change management. But it's not the entire story, but it helps bring that other perspective, that other lens into the conversation to really understand and look at what support looks like for leadership, what support looks like for organizations as they learn and as they navigate, again, changes that are both expected and anticipated or unexpected. So in addition to that academic work in the decade plus now, with financial services and nonprofit organizations, and then going through grad school, I started working as an independent consultant as well, partnering with different teams and organizations, a couple different industry groups to offer pro bono consulting for different organizations, really focusing on organizational health employee engagement, strategic planning, and change management. All of those components, it's like a system. They all kind of interact with one another. To look just at leadership without looking at change, or to look at change without looking at leadership, doesn't quite get that full picture. And so it's really bringing a lot of that in. Each of those engagements, each of those client interactions was unique, but that common thread was that people, when it comes to how people navigate and respond and address change, and how we as I/O psychology practitioners, as change management professionals, how we help people through change, is really people want clarity and they want connection when they're facing that change, whether it's planned, unplanned, big changes, small changes, government work, private sector, it doesn't matter. Outside of my day-to-day work with in government, public sector, I also host the Science4Work podcast. So that platform allows me to have conversations, interviews with researchers and practitioners, really about evidence-based insights from I/O psychology and HR management. It's a really, truly a rewarding way for me to be able to research accessible, practical insights and knowledge, and also sharpen my own practice in the things that I do. Often I walk away from a conversation, from an interview, with something that I can immediately apply in the workplace, or I can see places where it can be immediately applied, whether that's just a fresh perspective on framing resilience, or a new tool for understanding engagement, or really just perspective on leadership that can help me see my own work a little bit differently. Really, when I look at that collective experience and how that has influenced how I operate in organizational change, what ties it together is really this drive to understand how people and how organizations handle complexity. So my research on agility has become one part of that, but the bigger picture is really just helping people move forward with that, again, with that clarity and that confidence when change feels uncertain. There's a lot of the technical side that can go on with change management, especially when you work with project managers and IT teams, great minds who have very sharp expertise in their areas. It's also very critical to monitor and to manage and to navigate how people are engaging with that change. There's a lot of the psychological component that goes with that. And when you bring that into the equation early and often, and you're checking in with people, you are whatever data you're gathering to sort of measure how people are psychologically responding and addressing and navigating that change. That's what helps different initiatives, different projects. That's what helps it all come together in a sustainable way. So that's a little bit of my journey, from psychology to financial services, to leadership, to nonprofit work, to consulting, to my now leading organizational change for one of the state of Oregon agencies, ongoing work with Science4Work. But I'll go ahead and pause it there, and I'd love to hear from the other panelists, and then love to just spend time answering any questions that people might have, digging into some of the insights, and really just understanding where people are.
Awesome. Brianna, would you like me to go next?
Yes, I am spotlighting you right now, so you'll be able to share your screen.
All right, thank you. All right, let me get the right screen up. Are you seeing my PowerPoint? I'm assuming so.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I can't see anything but the PowerPoint now. So here we are. So I just like to start. This is a picture of me when I was 6 years old. And I just like to start to remind everybody, I know you're going to hear lots of amazing accomplishments from the panelists today. And just remember, nobody started where we are now. There's a lot of work and a lot of years that went into everything that we all have done. So we're all just a little 6-year-old in a grown-up body who's done lots of wild and amazing things at times. In terms of my educational background, majorly, I went to John Carroll University, majored in psychology and Spanish, and then I graduated from the University of Akron's PhD program in I/O psychology. I also got licensed as a psychologist by the state of Ohio, which is pretty rare in industrial organizational psychology. A lot of times, there are a lot of people out there that are referring to themselves as psychologists. Unfortunately, that is not ethically correct unless you're licensed by your state psychology board. So even though you might have a PhD or be working toward that, a psychology license is a separate credential. So I was fortunate enough to work in an organization that allowed me to get the couple years of experience that is needed, that specific type of experience for a psychology license, and then pass the standardized test, which is called the EPPP, as well as the ethics exam that's required in Ohio in order to be a licensed psychologist. In terms of my career journey, so like many of you, I'm sure you've held summer jobs, part-time jobs. I wouldn't discount those in your career journey. Obviously, as you gain more and more experience, you're not going to necessarily talk about things like being an assistant manager at a pool or other things that I've done in the past, but they're all things that help you learn about people and about leadership and about running organizations. So I wouldn't discount them, even though maybe they're not necessarily the resume builders that some of your other experience might be. I also had an undergraduate internship at a company called OE Connection, where I interned in HR just to try to understand, like, if I go this psychology route, but I end up in business, which wasn't a grand plan of mine, then what skills do I have that could apply to what I felt like was the most related field to psychology in the business world, which was HR. So I did a summer internship at OE Connection. I then went to University of Akron. I kind of doubled down on my education and felt like if I was going to pursue a career path, being a professor seemed pretty cool. And in order to do that, I needed to get a PhD. So I was fortunate to get into Akron's I-O program. Again, I-O wasn't a grand plan for me. It just kind of like happened. I just fell into it. I applied to 3 different grad programs in the state of Ohio and got into the I-O program at Akron. And that was the only thing I got into. And I met the people and really fell in love with it and felt like it was meant to be. But I didn't, come out of the womb thinking that I was going to go into I-O necessarily. And while I was at Akron, I tried to get both applied and academic experience as well. Right out of grad school, I went to an organization called Pradco, which is located up here in Cleveland. They are heavy on pre-hire assessment. So I did close to 1,000 assessments of folks' fitness for duty for police and fire, CEOs, machinists, salespeople, all kinds of pre-hire assessments, along with some training, coaching, engagement surveys, and things of that sort. But it was really heavy on pre-hire assessment. And it was there that I got the experience to become a licensed psychologist because the principals of the business were licensed. And one of the requirements in Ohio is to work under a licensed psychologist. And also the type of work, the individual assessment work, lended really well to the requirements to be licensed in Ohio, which are really clinically driven. So that ended up working out well. And I was able to get licensed while I was there. After that, I got recruited over by a friend from college to go into financial consulting. I joined a firm in Cleveland called Marshberry. There, I was asked to lead their second largest business unit, which I did for 4.5 years, helped them expand internationally, got a little bored, asked for kind of a different role, and we decided that I would start up an organizational development and learning department from the ground up. So I did that. We went from 0 courses to over 330 in the about 3 years that we had that program in place and I was working there. But again, got bored. We had taken on a capital investment. They always say that things aren't going to change when you take on outside capital, and my experience has been that they often do. So I opened myself up to another, any other types of opportunities that might come my way. And where I'm at now, I actually hold 3 different jobs, technically. So one is at ThenDesign Architecture, where I am part-time leading people operations for them. So everything people related. I am the only people person there. There's about 60 employees, and it's been a really great change, a different industry, great people. I went from an organization where the average tenure was 2 years, and now I'm at an organization where the average tenure is 11 years last I checked. So there's lots of longevity, more of like a family feel, and people who are a little more patient, I would say, than like financial consulting, which my experience was more type A, hard driving, down to the minute being scheduled, which I eventually got a little burnt out on. I also teach one class a semester at Carroll University, which is where I went to undergrad. And then I'm doing some independent consulting part-time as well under my brand, which is called Acusights Solutions. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll have my contact information up. I can share it at the end as well if people are interested in getting in touch with me. Back to you, Brianna.
So much. And then Joey, we'll have you next.
Awesome. Can I get a quick pulse check? Can you all see my screen okay?
Yep, all good. If you want to put in presentation mode, that would be the only thing.
Sure. All right, everyone. My name is Joey Ha. I'm currently based out of Astoria, Queens, New York. I'm also a senior associate at KPMG, where I'm mainly responsible for the enablement and change management for Gen AI tools at the firm. And I'm also currently a PhD student at Hofstra University as well. So I'm gonna take a step back and just kind of go through my journey. How did I kind of get into this field of I/O psychology, and just kind of wrap it around with what I'm currently driving at KPMG at the firm. So initially, my journey as a change management practitioner started back in my undergraduate program at UMD. I believe during this time, I was pursuing a bachelor's in psychology, but after taking a few courses at the business school, I became a little conflicted and wasn't sure how I could merge the two fields together and really make a career out of it. I was pretty fascinated and interested in both fields, but at the time, I didn't know that I/O psychology existed. And so right before I graduated from University of Maryland, so I read about this field called I/O, went out on a limb, took a risk, and applied for this I/O master's program at University of Baltimore. And during this time, I really fell in love with the field and had the opportunity to work alongside different organizations through the master's program, and eventually started working at Henley, which was a fashion tech startup company that was responsible for delivering virtual fitting AR technology, especially for finance and fashion industry clients there. Also during my master's program, I also worked at Prometric alongside working at the tech startup there, where we were mainly responsible for the credentialing and psychometric services for some of our clients. So during this time, I was really able to apply the skills that I was learning through my master's program right on the field in regards to survey analysis, behavioral metrics, tracking, and everything else that revolves around the psychometrics side of I/O psychology. Now, just kind of recalling back on my experience from Henley, Prometric, KPMG, and eventually Guidehouse, I did serve several clients across several industries, including but not limited to healthcare, financials, retail, energy, and so on. So after my experience at Henley and Prometric, I did graduate from my master's program at University of Baltimore, and was able to join this firm called Guidehouse, which used to be a PwC-owned firm before they had a carve-out from their public sector branch. And it was at this time, at this firm, that I was really able to gain my footing on the field of change management. On the projects that I was able to serve at this firm, I mainly served tech implementation related projects where they added on change management as an add-on service to those implementations. And during this time, I was able to really dive into the tactical components of what drives change management. How can we really enable and empower the users of our clients to adopt certain technological tools and really become power users through our tactical methodologies there. Specifically at Guidehouse, I did serve on more so the CRM and ERP related systems for some of our public sector clients there. And then ultimately, after gathering all of this knowledge and applying my skill set in terms of the methodology there, I was able to take that knowledge over to KPMG and join their basically Salesforce CRM implementation team to continue leveraging those change management tactics and driving forward the implementation of CRM. So after a few years at KPMG, I decided to enroll in Hofstra University's Applied Organizational Psychology program and pursue my PhD there. As I mentioned before, I still am a current PhD student. I'm currently done with all my classes at this point and in full-on dissertation mode. But right now I'm starting to study the impact of leadership on the flow state and how that could emerge within the workplace setting, and how can some of our personality traits like general self-efficacy influence this relationship. I'm starting to dive into the findings and happy to keep the team, everyone here posted if you are interested in the findings of that study. And then throughout my time at Hofstra University while pursuing this PhD program, I also worked at Campana and Schott, which is an international startup consultancy that specializes in life sciences industries as well. So think pharma, biotech, medical devices. I've also had the opportunity to kind of go broaden up a little bit in terms of my skill set and drive overall business transformation related services for some of our clients in that industry, and dive into some of the more business technical components of what could drive the underlying processes for change management. And then lastly, after my stint at Campana and Schott, I realized that I couldn't stay away from KPMG, so I decided to boomerang back over to the firm to continue growing myself as a change management expert and really learn about how we can best utilize different tactics and methodologies to drive AI adoption altogether. So currently, my work revolves around the strategy and implementation of different change management tactics that revolve around learning and development, strategic communications, gamification tactics, people analytics, capturing user insights and behavior. All of these different components I'm able to help manage and drive the overall picture of what is going on within the user journey and the user map of utilizing AI tools across the firm. Some of the AI tools that we work with and source are related to the Microsoft Copilot features, some of the embedded agents that are being rolled out as part of that Copilot ecosystem, as well as this new Genie tool that is part of the Azure Databricks system. And that's all I had. I'll bring it back over to you, Brianna.
Carroll, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, first of all, thanks everyone for presenting. Like, that was actually really interesting, hearing all of your guys' story, the different kind of paths you take. Common theme I've seen in all these panels is that no one knew what I-O was until they were already in college, at the very least, even sometimes graduated. So that's just something I picked up. We're going to start just doing questions. If you guys want to type questions in the chat or use the raise hand feature on Teams in like the reactions section, we can just start the Q&A. If there's no one going right now, I have a question actually, and it's a little greedy of me, but for all three of you specifically, but I think maybe this pertains to Matt a little more. My question is really about the sort of like the value proposition of change management. Like, how do you sell the idea of change management to organizations? Maybe in terms of like if you were, going to do a private consulting project or something like this. Like, what are the kinds of things that you would like try to communicate to an organization that's like, this is why change management is important. This is why it's valuable. This is why you should pay me to do it for you, pretty much.
Sure, I'm happy to take a stab at that one, and then would love to hear if Christina and Joey have anything to add. But one of the things that I've learned, I think early on, the focus really was, how do I make this sound important? How do I make this sound urgent? How do I get them to buy in? And oftentimes that just kind of goes over somebody's head. They're like, no, I don't. No, thanks. It's when you start asking questions that you can start to get a little bit of interest. And one of the questions is, it's almost a prompt followed by that question. It's think of a time that you have recently got, like, what's a recent initiative or a change project? What's a recent initiative or project that your company went through? How did it go? Is it still ongoing? And they may have all high regard answers. Yeah, it was great and this and that. You just keep asking questions, because ultimately what you find is that, change only succeeds if people adopt it. And it's not something that's adopted for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months. Is it sustained? And you'll likely see some of that pullback. Something gets implemented or something launches and there's the excitement around it, but then it kind of pulls back a little bit. And that's where asking those questions about how was that for you? You were the manager on that. How did your team respond to it? Inevitably, they're going to share something along the lines of, yeah, it went well, but you know what? This particular thing really was frustrating, or this piece right here was so challenging we didn't expect it. Now we can have a question around that. And when we start to have a question around that, you can start to understand that when you design systems or strategies or processes in practice, it's less about trying to convince them that this is necessary, but reminding them of the times where they haven't yet had that a part of their process, where you can say, now, if you could do it again, what would you have done better? Or what would you have changed? What went well in that project? Because inevitably there's going to be things that they're like, this right here went really well. We were really excited about it. Cool. How do you build off of that? How do you repeat that? What was that process like? And asking questions to really understand it can help make that transition or that value proposition something where they now connect to it. It's not you're trying to convince them. It's they're recognizing, man, we could have totally had that on our team, on our company, or in our company, on our project. That would have made things so much better. And it's like, there we go. Let's have a conversation. Christina or Joey, do either of you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, like, a lot of what Matt's describing, I would include in what I would call a discovery call, and maybe Matt would call it the same thing. And I think our approaches are similar, is that it's not so much about, like, let me show you this great thing that I have to show you. It's more about, like, let's talk about what's been going on. Why are you talking to me? What's brought you here? Like, I find that just my curiosity and my willingness to ask a question that then helps them think through something in a way that they hadn't before is something that kind of attracts them to more time with me. So I won't say that, like, I go out and I sell, like, hey, I can help you with change. I think there are some organizations that want to know what to do, and there are other organizations that want to know how to do it. And I bet Matt is great and has lots of experience helping advise organizations on how do you do it, especially if you haven't done it well in the past. I tend to get brought in for more of the what do you do, and then the organization's left to figure it out on their own, or they have the resources to do that. But like Matt said, I think a lot of it, so much more of it is about asking the right questions in that meeting, showing genuine interest, knowing a bit about that company's business if you can in advance, and really just having, in my opinion, once you've asked like 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 really great questions, they're gonna be like, okay, so wait a second, so tell me more about what you do and how you do it. Like, they're so intrigued because people don't often ask them questions that way. So not to, like, kind of cop out on the question that you asked, but I don't think it's like, let me show you my bright, shiny thing that I built and it would be amazing for your organization. It's more about starting with them and then helping understand how you can help them.
Yeah, just to add on to Christina's point there, I definitely echo Christina's sentiments. I think, drawing from my field of tech implementations, change management, especially from a human-centered perspective, is a necessity. You really can't lead with the technology first before understanding the behavioral and the mindsets of the users of what you're trying to drive. And I don't try to segment the two fields differently, but I do see them blended in together to form the overall value of what the client wants. And that initially starts from those initial conversations that Christina just talked about, that Matt's talking about. You really need to sit down with our clients, and you can get real tactical just in terms of what you can do to capture that initial thinking. For example, we have design thinking sessions from a human design perspective to really get into the nitty-gritty details of the user's mindset there. And it really starts with sitting down with them, asking those exploratory questions, and then start to refine their approach accordingly there.
It makes a lot of sense once you get them talking about the root of the problem. It's a lot easier to be like, oh, this is the service or that I can provide for you. Appreciate that. Let's go with Petros. Your hand is up.
Thank you. Thanks again, everybody, for your wonderful presentations. It's been really great just getting to learn more about you. So I have a question for Christina. That's because I'm somebody that is new to the field of I-O psychology, and I just got my master's this April. And I came from a background that is completely different. I came from, a teaching background. I taught for some time. And I was very, intrigued to hear that you have that background as well. So I'd like to know, one of my, my interests is really OD, organizational development. So I'd really like to know what some of the transferable skills have been for you, from teaching into OD, from teaching into, people operations. What are some of the transferable skills that have been the most valuable to you, going into those fields? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. A couple things I think are transferable right off the bat. So if you are a person who can take a lot of complex information, organize it, and figure out how to communicate it effectively to others, that is a wonderful strength. And you will find that you can apply that, whether it's in teaching somebody one-on-one, facilitating a group session, creating training programs that other people, take on their own, or that you teach other people how to teach themselves. Those are all things that are really great strengths of that teaching to OD and people ops type of approach, really direct there, obviously. The other thing that I think comes to mind is just your understanding of people dynamics. So like if you can hold a room, full of people and try to get their attention and keep them interested and teach them something in a way that they absorb, like it's part expert knowledge, part teaching, and part marketing, I think. I think a lot of the really awesome people in our field, they're great at marketing. Like they won't probably ever say that or don't think of themselves as that way. And I don't think you have to be great at it to be great in our field. Absolutely not. But if you look at the Adam Grants and the Daniel Pinks and all these people that have a lot of notoriety, they're not inherently better in our field than other people necessarily, but they're really great at marketing it. And I think that in order to get information through to people, you have to capture their attention and you have to communicate it in a way, again, that they are willing to absorb and apply. And if you've had experience teaching, my guess is that you already have a little bit, at least, understanding of what works and what doesn't in that regard. I always feel like if you're smart, if you're resourceful, if you can navigate people dynamics, so handle conflict constructively and, understand when there's things going on and like who's to go to on this, even though they might not be that on the org chart, like you can figure out any technical stuff, right? Like the technical side of our field, it's a lot when you're in grad school, but if you're smart and you work hard, it's not super hard, right? It's more of that navigating the application of it that becomes challenging. And a lot of those skills that you learn from a teaching standpoint, I think readily apply to whether, again, it's a direct teaching type of role or it's you creating an environment that's conducive to learning across an organization.
That was great. Thank you so much, Christina.
There are a couple of questions in the chat as well. Y'all want to take a look at those?
All right. Looks like the first one has my name on it, but we'll again would love to hear any insights that Christina and Joey share with it. So the question, leadership agility is commonly mistaken for agility leadership, which is often tech related. How would you distinguish the two? That is a great question. And I've had many engaging conversations with different people about distinguishing the two. So leadership agility is about the capacity of leaders themselves, their ability to stay flexible in thought, grounded in values, intentional in action, and when, especially from the lens with organizational change, intentional in action when facing that uncertainty or when navigating some kind of change. It's about how leaders adapt their mindset, how they adapt relationships and decisions in real time. Agile leadership, on the other hand, is often linked to agile as a methodology, especially in tech. And I think that's where the question was going. That's more about applying agile principles like iterative development, sprints, stand-ups to leadership practices. It's a process-driven approach that can have a lot of similar concepts, but are still, again, very distinct differences. The way I think about it is leadership agility is about who you are and how you show up as a leader when things change. Agile leadership is about how you apply a specific set of practices or frameworks. Both can be very valuable. Both are incredibly useful skills to develop within individuals and within organizations, but they are not the same. They are distinct. They are different. Leadership agility is broader. It can apply whether you're in tech, in government, healthcare, anywhere that change is happening. Agile leadership, if an organization or if a practitioner has embraced more of that agile framework, then that's how are you leading that framework and the process, the specific practice or framework that's being utilized for a project or an initiative or some kind of process. And if I missed the question or misdirected it in a different way, Emmy, go ahead and come off of mute and clarify. But I think that's where you're going with the question. That's the way that I distinguish the two. And again, Christina, Joey, if you have anything to add, I'd be interested in that too.
Totally answered. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was basically going to say the same thing, Matt. Just in terms of agile methodology, that's how I interpreted agility leadership or agile leadership, reflecting agile methodology, Scrum, Kanban, et cetera. That's all kind of tech focused, like you just said, Emmy. But leadership agility, I'm not too familiar with the construct and the literature itself, but I would assume it's similar to some of the characteristics like transformational leadership or providing that sort of environment for their employees to really thrive in and fostering that environment within a broader behavioral scope. That's how I would interpret that question. But yeah, I mean, if you had clarifications on that, I would love to get some color on it.
No, I think the answer was great. Thank you so much. I definitely work more in the agility leadership space. And so I think just really having a comprehensive understanding of the differences and the dialogue to really be able to distinguish the two is really important and interesting. So thanks.
Great answers, really. I'll read this next one from the chat. This is also very pertinent to me. One of the questions about starting your own consulting, which is one of my personal goals, is to have my own consulting firm. So I'll read it here from Zachary. It says, one of the most opaque things in I-O career journey is how to step into consulting independently. Obviously, getting experience in an existing org is great for knowing how to do the work, but he'd like to hear the panelists' experiences with doing independent work, such as how they started, how they keep it up, and how they balance it with other responsibilities. I would like to add on to it how to market it as well, which I think is like a pretty important concept, not all like graduate programs really teach you. So
I can jump in on that. So for me, I always had an entrepreneurial focus. But at the same time, I had to work, from a financial standpoint. I couldn't just like go out and launch my own business. So I first worked for a family-owned organization. I knew they were never going to open up ownership outside the family. And while I learned many great things, like I could just feel like my soul was kind of decaying there, like there was an itch that wasn't being scratched. And then I went to an organization that a year after I joined, they became employee owned. So that felt empowering. It felt like I could say I was an owner of a company, which was important to me. And financially, that was beneficial as well. And then I left that organization where I'm at now, where I work part-time for an established organization where I have benefits and, a place to go to and a standard set of coworkers and things like that. And then I also independently consult part-time as well. So for me, financially, like obviously you have to have an income built up or savings built up in order to survive while you're trying to start a business, because the vast majority of businesses fail. If you don't have the financial means saved up, then you won't have as much time as other people do to build your business. And so when I took this current opportunity, I had a different job offer that would have been more money than I would have ever made in my life, but it's for an organization that just recently called their employees back 5 days a week. So again, not as entrepreneurial, much more being an employee versus being an entrepreneur. And I just felt like it was apples and oranges, and I wanted to take more of the oranges route personally. So why I did that was one, I'm very fortunate. I have that job security, and I really, really, really like the work that I do there. So it doesn't feel like a chore or something that I'm just doing until this works out. Like I'm really enjoying what I'm doing there, but I also am really enjoying the fact that I get to sort of diversify my talents into a couple different areas. And so from an independent consulting standpoint, I had people approach me for a couple of years now, just saying like, hey, I need help with this. Do you seem like you could help with that? Just kind of like one-off kinds of things, small things, nothing to write home about. And so, it's pretty easy in Ohio to just open up an LLC. It's like $100. The hardest part is picking the name. And then until you have checks coming in, you don't even have to worry about a bank account. And there's just little logistical things along the way, I would say. But they're all things that anybody here could easily figure out. They're not hard. And especially if you just ask somebody like, hey, what did you do for this? Like, there's a good chance it's going to be the same for you, especially if they're a solo, entrepreneur. And so back to, more of the specifics of the question. So how it started for me was people asking me for help on things. And then also me taking a new opportunity where I specifically asked for the ability to consult independently on the side, because I'm not consulting for that organization. So it's not a conflict where, oh, this could be that business's work, but I'm kind of keeping it for myself. It's not like that. The work I do over there is different than the consulting work I do. Which I think is important. If you work for a consulting firm, there's a really high chance they're not going to want you to do side consulting for yourself. And so truthfully, how's it going? Like last year was my first full year that I did it. My goal again is not a 100% replacement of income goal, because I also work part-time. But for my goal that I had last year, I hit 25%. This year I'm on pace to hit 50% of my revenue goal. And a lot of people will say that it really takes 3 years. Like it takes 6 months to get kind of a proof of concept. And almost to the day of the 6 months, I got 3 signed contracts back that same week. And those are my first 3 signed contracts. They weren't like, again, super dramatic, super exciting, like I'm going to go buy a boat types of things, but like at least it was proof of concept. And then a lot of people will say it takes 3 years to really feel like it's something that you can sustain. And so if, my revenue doubled from this year to last year, if it doubles again next year, then I'll be at my goal, and that will be at the 3-year mark. And it's not going to be linear. Like I already know that. You're going to have good years and you're going to have bad years. And sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to why you have a good year one year and a bad year another year. So it's definitely not linear. How keeping up with it along with other responsibilities, I don't know. I think people think I never sleep. I obviously have 3 jobs right now. I have 3 kids. My husband's a college basketball coach. Like we're busy people, but I also I'm at a point in my life where I make time for the things that I want to make time for. So I don't want to be busy. I don't want my business to be something that consumes my life. The whole point of having the business is to enhance my life, not detract from it. So that's why my revenue goal is what it is. It's not to make, you know, a bajillion dollars and then never see my family. It's to enable our family to take great vacations and then, you know, kind of cut it off there. So it really just depends. Like where you're at now in grad school, it's hard to do a lot out of grad school because it consumes your whole life. So if you're thinking like it's going to be like this forever and then you're going to try to do consulting on top of it, like that might not be the case. My job is very manageable. I have great work-life balance. I do maybe check emails here and there in the evenings or have to, you know, call somebody here or there in the evenings, but it's my choice because that's important to me. It's not because I'm being demanded to get on meetings till 8 p.m. or 6 p.m. even or anything like that. And then I also teach again because that's important to me. And I found an efficient way to prepare and make sure that I'm delivering the experience I want to deliver again without eating into all the other things I want to do in my life. From a marketing standpoint, I don't think there's any like silver bullet, so to speak. I think it's, you know, telling people in your network what you're doing. It's showing a genuine interest in what they're doing, not just, again, coming with the like, look what I built. Don't you love it? You know, do you want to buy it kind of thing? But it's also like, what are you doing? What are you working on? How are things going for you? And as you go forward in your career, you're probably going to accumulate a bunch of LinkedIn connections and other connections and things like that. And, you know, those are people that you can reach out to and just say, hey, we haven't chatted in a while. How are things going? I also am trying to post more consistently on LinkedIn just to stay visible. Again, not to say like, come buy something from me, but like, this is what I'm reading. This is what's important to me. What's your questions about this? You know, what do you know about this? What are you learning? Or I read this interesting thing. Like, not a lot of people read academic literature when they're in corporate America. So, like, if you're bringing like a practical perspective on literature, academic literature in corporate America to like LinkedIn, and doing it in a really bite-sized, digestible way, like that's different. I don't have an email list. I've sent out one newsletter in the entire time I've been in business. So like, again, I just don't think it's like a formula. And I know that's hard because everybody like wants the formula. Like if I just follow these steps, it will work out. But the biggest thing I would say is like get great experience, like work with companies where you are going to be challenged and learn a lot and take all that knowledge and refine your unique practice of these skills because Matt's practice, Joey's practice of all the things we do will be completely different than mine. Better in some ways, different in other ways. And it's just, that's just the way it is. And it doesn't make it better or worse. It just means that it's your unique spin based on your experience. So don't come out of grad school like slingshot, like, hey, I just finished, I have a degree, everybody should hire me. Like they're going to want to know, what did you do? Who did you work for? What did you help that company do? Did you help it scale? Did you help it double in size? Like all those things are why somebody hires consultants a lot of the times, and not necessarily the education. And I'm not downplaying the education because it's the reason you'll get to do a lot of amazing things in your career. But a lot of the reason that people are going to hire consultants is based on them being able to guide somebody who's in their shoes. So I'm going to stop there because I just said a lot of words.
I'll just add a couple of things that while you were talking, Christina, there so much of what you're saying in my mind, what I was thinking was yes. And I would add, you know, for me, it started pretty simple. I mean, not just consulting, but my career. It started pretty simple through relationships. You know, one of my first jobs right out of college was relationship type work, you know, clients and sales and things like that. And what I learned early on in that sales role that is carried over to when I was doing independent consulting and still carries over to now that I'm internal and not really having an external consulting operation right now, that the key piece with relationships and the way that somebody had put it was, what was it? It's not who you know, it's not what you know, it's who knows you for what you know. And part of that is having those conversations to when somebody says, organizational psychology, like, so you build closets, you know, we've all heard that running joke. It's like, no. And I'm not, when I then respond back with, here's kind of what that looks like, it's not with that pitch, because people can see a pitch coming from a mile away and oftentimes they'll shut down. But it's talking to them a little bit about what that is, what that value is that I bring, and maintaining those relationships again with a them-centered mindset. What is it that you're dealing with? And they may reach out. I've had people reach out and they say, hey, we're thinking of doing this leadership program. Do you know anything about blah, blah, blah? Like, yeah, let's have a conversation. And then that can start that discovery call. You may get to a point, at least with me, I've gotten to a point with a few people where it's like, this is really an opportunity, but you know who'd be better at this? Christina would be a better resource because this is definitely in her wheelhouse. That happened for Christina because she and I had that conversation where I got to know not just who she is or what she does, but I know her for what she does. And the reciprocal of that is I've had people say, hey, Matt, so-and-so recommend that I reach out to you. Can we have a conversation? Absolutely. So that word of mouth really has been central, just so important. And it's centered around that relationship piece. Balancing, and the other part of that was, balancing consulting with other responsibilities. That is, that's a constant balance and rebalance. There are seasons, there are times where it's exciting and energizing, and it's like, I've got this and that and all these things going on, and other moments where it's like, oh my gosh, there's only 28 hours in a day and I'm working all of them. You have to find what that balance looks like for you. And part of what has helped me with that is every now and then taking, as a project comes to a close, taking a step back and saying, okay, what does my current capacity look like? A good example, I had a few people reach out to me over the last few weeks. Hey, we're getting ready to start this project. We'd love for you to be involved. I respectfully declined right now because I know I have these other priorities going on, and I'm trying to figure out what that balance looks like for me. And so it's not that projects come in all the time, so it's hard to decline it when those are presented. But maintaining that balance for yourself, understanding, does this make sense for what my goals are beyond that, is really going to help keep you focused on the components that you really do enjoy, or the value that you really do bring. It can sharpen some of those skills. And, again, it comes back to that relationship. Instead of being known as a jack of all trades, but a master of none, people start to really identify, Christina is an expert when it comes to this. Joey is the go-to person when it comes to that. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take a lot of it can take a lot of time, and it can take a lot of patience. So definitely, keeping yourself taken care of through that process as well. That would be the other piece that I would add to that.
Thanks so much, guys. That was really very insightful. Did you want to ask this next one, Brianna?
Joey, I think that you saw the two questions that were more, I think that probably everyone can chime in a bit, but I know part of my question was towards Joey. So if you want to hit on like the technology questions, and then Matt and Christina, y'all can jump in if y'all have anything as well.
Sure. Yeah, so I did see both Allie's and yours, Brianna. I'll try to merge the two questions together. I think, to answer your question, Allie, I think that depends on the scope of the project, the needs of the client, really in terms of what are they trying to get at, what does success look like, and therefore what types of tools can we embed within this project to help you bring that vision to life. I don't try to think about it from a tech first perspective. Hey, let's deliver this restructuring process for your HR department, for example, and then start following up with, okay, what technology can we embed or adopt to allow that process to emerge? It's more so, what are your needs, your problems first? Going back to our conversation on sitting down with the client first and understanding what their prerogatives are, and then start refining the structure accordingly from there. But one thing that, just to kind of fully close the question, one thing that I do see a lot within the tech side of consulting is there is a lot of need for, especially for IOs, there's a lot of need for data visualization skills, people analytics. So think Power BI, Tableau, and other tools that I might be forgetting right now. A lot of these tools have been increasingly woven into our roles as IO psychologists to really understand how can we use data to drive and understand human behavior in the workplace. And I think if you wanted to start getting a head start on some of those tools and really make yourself competent, in terms of what technology can I utilize. I think that could be a good start for you to start looking into. And then going back to the agile methodologies, I've seen that a lot in my projects, especially. So think about Scrum. Scrum has been come up a lot. I believe waterfall is starting to be phased out a little bit. But a lot of these agile methodologies might be also a good start for you to look into if you're considering a field in tech consulting. And then going into your question, Brianna, advice for those who are interested in work in AI and other technologies. Again, I think that drives into what are the needs of the project and the demands of what the client is looking for. But I think if you're focused on AI specifically, and again, AI branches out into so many different sub layers and sub departments. I generally look at AI as a tool to enhancing someone's ways of working, as opposed to just looking at it as a segmented thing. I don't look at I'm going to use Copilot for example. I don't look at Copilot differently versus this new researcher agent that was released from Microsoft roadmap, where it serves as more of a subject matter expert versus another analyst agent that they released, where I'm only looking at that as part of a data scientist assistant expert that's in your pocket. I try to weave in all of these tools together to provide that comprehensive story of how can we take you, client or user of this tool from A to B to C, woven in with all these tools that can help you utilize your use cases effectively. Don't want to get too technical there. Happy to clarify a bit further, but I would recommend, if you're looking for just general advice into getting into AI type of work, I would recommend looking into the overall process flows and workflows of how different AI tools can be embedded together, as opposed to looking at individual segmented AI tools. I hope that answers your question, Brianna, but I did kind of diverge a little bit there.
I'll chime in as well on that for just a brief moment. Yes, the demand for technology adoption and consulting around technology adoption is absolutely growing fast. But it's also important to draw a distinction. Consulting in our spaces we don't have to necessarily be the one to build the technology, like developing the large language models or implementing whatever software program. The expertise that we bring, the knowledge that we bring is how people and organizations can successfully adopt and integrate and then make use of that technology. So from an I-O perspective, when it comes to change and learning and behavior, that's going to be asking very much to what Joey was saying. How do you prepare people for a new tool so they actually use it? How do you measure adoption and effectiveness? How do you address resistance and support that learning curve? How do you align the tech with the strategy, the culture, and the workflow to solve whatever or to address whatever challenges or obstacles or goals that the organization has? That's where our training is directly relevant. To me, my perspective is that I don't need to be the software engineer expert, but I do need to know what the language is to be able to fluently have those conversations with those people that are experts on that software technology. And that means staying curious, asking questions, reading up on the basics, learning as I go as well. But the big piece there is partnering with those tech experts. Another piece that has guided me through a lot of different projects and different work is recognizing or remembering, keeping in mind, the meaning of your communication is the result you are getting. So sometimes technical people who are software experts in tech, they know this software program, this LLM, they know whatever it is, inside, outside, upside down. They know every detail of it. If there's a gap in how that's being communicated out to somebody who's very non-technical, that's an opportunity for us to come in with change management and say, okay, how do we bridge that communication gap to make sure that when somebody on the tech side says, well, we need to understand your data. Data is a big word. It can mean a million different things to a million different people. And so understanding when you ask for data, what do you mean? And when they hear data, what are they hearing and providing back? That's where we kind of can be that bridge between it. And so, the goal for me, the goal is not necessarily to know everything about LLMs or advanced systems. It's knowing how to speak the language enough, ask the right questions enough, and then apply some of that I/O knowledge to ensure that the adoption, the alignment, and the impact are cohesive and that they're working together. It's not going to be a perfect fit necessarily, but how close can we get it where it can continue to evolve and continue to merge together? Right now, AI and LLMs that's the focus. But fast forward 5 years, what's going to be the new technology? And so if you spend all your time trying to be the expert on LLMs, cool. There's no judgment there. But do you set yourself up for the repeated sustainable skill as an I/O or as a change management person, where I almost want to say, like for me, I've had these conversations with different technology teams. That's your area of expertise. The technology. What I'm here for is to help bridge that, because the people that are going to use what you're building, the people that are going to use this tool, do they know how to use it? Do they see it as a tool? Are they willing and ready to let that tool go when the next one comes along? And so that's sort of that bridging, what we bring with I/O and change management to different innovative resources and solutions that are being presented.
All right. Thank you so much for that answer. That was very, very insightful, and I appreciate all of the detail that y'all gave. I think that there's only one more question in the chat. Vanessa said, what advice or recommendations do you have for early I/O professionals who are outside of school and working, but still looking to grow their experience in the field?
All right, I'll jump in. I'll kick that started. I'll get that started. There's a lot of incredible groups, organizations that are out there, local, regional chapters, things like that. Find those communities. On the one hand, it feels like we are the tiniest industry group that nobody's ever heard of. And on the other hand, once you start connecting with people and you start seeing how many different programs and partnerships that are out there, there's so much good that's going on. And that's where I've gained some of my experience, was joining some of those industry groups, some of the programs that they offer, being a part of those teams, volunteering for some of their work, for some of their outreach. And all of a sudden, that's when, hey, I'm seeing Brianna and Christina and Carroll, once a month at our monthly meeting. That they're getting to know me a little bit more. I'm getting to know them a little bit more. You're building your relationships within that community. That's where I would start. I can't overstate it enough how many good groups there are with some really awesome people and awesome potential. Connect with them, find them there's so many on LinkedIn. There's so many on just a bunch of different websites. There's a handful of people on LinkedIn who I'm connected with, who they post monthly. Here are the different regional groups meetups. Find those, join them. That's where you're going to get so much. There's so much potential just waiting in those.
Yeah, I'm gonna plus one on that, onto Matt's comments there. So I'm based in New York. We have so many different local organizations, statewide organizations, regional organizations, Metro, ATD, just to name a few. I'm not sure what the outlook looks like down in Houston, but if there isn't too many organizations for you to be involved in, please go ahead and start creating one and start networking that way, and really growing your brand and representation of I/O within that market specifically. I think there is always opportunities for you to be involved in, whether it's more professionally or academically. There's also SciOp and other conferences that are held annually. Please start getting involved and try to just put yourself out there, grow your brand that way, and continue to stay connected with any organizations or within the field of I/O as a whole.
I'll just add that since 2015, I haven't worked with any other I/O folks above me. So a lot of what I've learned is through working with really great business people, not necessarily great I/O people. So don't discount that. Obviously, like, working with great I/Os is awesome. And, there's a kinship there that doesn't maybe necessarily exist with other people. But like, I've learned a ton from just working in business and working close to the owners of the business and how they make those decisions. So don't discount that in terms of helping you become a well-rounded I/O professional. And then the other thing I would say is every role I've ever gotten, to Matt's point, has been because of somebody I know. So my first role out of grad school was somebody I went to high school with who connected me. My next role after that was somebody from college. And my current role, I had a friend from grade school who was working there. I've only one time in my life applied to a job and gotten a job offer. And that's not to like discourage you if you don't have a big network or great network, because I know there are lots of people who apply to jobs and get those jobs, and that's awesome. That's just not been my experience. So for me, it always kind of comes back to the who, and every decision I've made in my career has really been about who do I see myself wanting to spend time with, because you do spend more time with the folks that you work with than anybody else probably in your life. And so their values are going to rub off on you. Their judgment, their decision making is going to rub off on you. The way they handle conflicts is going to rub off on you. So to me, it's like, yeah, you want to keep furthering your skills in I/O. There's ways to do that. You can subscribe to PsycNet and get academic articles and, keep up on things and read textbooks and updates. Like there's plenty of ways to stay up to date on the literature. My quantitative analysis skills, they were so great before. There's lots of things that have happened in the last however many years that I'm not up to date on anymore, but I still feel like I'm doing pretty well. And it's partially because of all of those great people I've surrounded myself with, and specifically what I've learned about business from them over my career.
All right. Well, does anyone else have any closing comments before I close this out?
Just an appreciation for putting this together, and we've got how many people that are joining live and how many that'll follow the recording later. To everybody that's listening, this when we talk about community, when we talk about connecting and networking with people, this is what we mean. And so if you have additional questions, I can speak for myself. I won't voluntold Christina or Joey, but if you have questions, please reach out on LinkedIn, send me a message, shoot me a connection request. Happy to keep the conversation going and happy to be a resource for others in the community, because I know for me, I've benefited tremendously from having people who've done that for me as well.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so, so grateful for all of our speakers for all of the sessions. I think we have about 40 speakers total that we spread out over, I think it's 11 sessions total. So Christina, Matt, Joey, thank you so, so much for all of your insights. All of your answers were so detailed and thoughtful. And I know I can tell from the chat right now that everyone has gotten a lot from this call. Just so everyone knows, I know that we talked a lot about consulting and a lot of the questions were about consulting. So because there are so many consultants in I/O, we have multiple sessions where consulting is one of the topics. So next week on the 25th, same time, 5:30 over Teams. That'll be posted soon. That one is specifically about consulting. So if y'all have questions or you're interested in consulting, definitely attend next week. I'll be posting that soon. I just had a speaker message me and say that he can't do it, but we will still have 3 of the 4 speakers for next week. And I also want to say thank you to all of our speakers who are on other sessions who have been attending all of the sessions and asking questions and participating. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, y'all feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, message any of us, me, Kale. Obviously, all of our speakers have opened themselves up, and they will be linked in their LinkedIns will be in the session info for their session. So yes, thank you all so much, and I appreciate your attendance.